This day in sports history. This episode is brought to you by Stirling Roastery. For several months you've heard me talking about the great products and scents offered by the Stirling Soap Company. And while there may not seem to be any correlation between soap and coffee, what is similar is the same care and attention to detail in delivering great products to their customers. Stirling Roastery will ship great-tasting beans or ground coffee, for whatever coffee-making process you prefer, right to your door. I gave their breakfast blend a try recently, and I can tell you, it was a great way to get my day kick-started with this smooth, medium blend. And just like their soaps, they have a variety to choose from. Give Stirling Roastery a try at stirlingsoap.com. It's July 8th, and on this day in 1990, it was the final chapter of the Boris Becker-Stefan Edberg trilogy. Boris Becker bounded onto the scene in 1985, winning Wimbledon as an unseeded 17-year-old. He ushered in the new era of power tennis with his big serve and his powerful forehand winners. He also was not afraid of getting a little bit dirty to win a point, and he enjoyed a nice serve and volley game as well. Well, he came back in '86 and he won it again. And if not for Stefan Edberg, Becker may have been able to match Bjorn Borg's record of the time of 5 Wimbledon titles in the Open era. Prior to their first meeting in a Grand Slam final at Wimbledon in 1988, Boris had beaten Stefan 19 out of their 14 meetings, and he was heavily favored to add his name to the cup at Wimbledon one more time. After taking the first set, though, Boris lost his rhythm and he dropped the next 3 to lose 3-1. They met again on center court at the All England Club in the '89 final. Becker won that one in 3 straight sets to claim his 3rd Wimbledon singles title, setting up what happened on this day in 1990 when, for the 3rd consecutive year, Edberg and Becker played in the Wimbledon final. And this one turned out to be the best of the bunch. Edberg played his serve and volley game to perfection to take the first 2 sets 6-2, 6-2, and he was in complete control. But Becker fought back to take sets 3 and 4, 6-3, 6-3, to even things up, and now he swung all the momentum back into his court. Becker took a 3-1 lead in the 5th and appeared to be well on his way to his 4th Wimbledon title, and become the first man to rally from 2 sets down to win since 1927 when Henri Cochet did it. But Edberg broke back, and then he evened things up at 3 games apiece. And that's when Becker had trouble getting his first serve in, and Edberg feasted on his slower second serves, ripping backhand winners to gain a lead. And then when Becker missed a forehand volley, he felt the momentum shift back.
It's a beautiful lob. It's a wonderful lob.
That gave Edberg the opportunity to serve for the match, and he took it.
He's done it. He's done it. He's done it.
One of my hardest losses, because I felt like I had the match in my pocket.
By being the best in the world, I think you create some sort of respect for one another.
I will never say I was better than Stefan, and you probably would never say he was better than me. We were very much equal. And it was just tennis. It was just being free in that moment on the court and see who's better. And I think that was the magic of our rivalry.
Even though Becker won 25 of their 35 head-to-head meetings during their careers, Edberg won 3 of their 4 matches in Grand Slam events. This was one of the all-time great rivalries in Wimbledon history. It also had a specific effect on a young Swiss kid named Roger Federer. He remembered watching these two battle it out for 3 consecutive years, and he attributes his focusing solely on tennis rather than soccer on watching these two play epic tennis at Wimbledon. Edberg would later have another sort of impact on Roger, working as his coach for several years. This episode is brought to you by Firefly Books, and with you being a sports fan just like me, here's 2 suggestions for your next great sports read. If you love basketball, then you need to add Dave Zarum's book, NBA 75, The Definitive History. uncover untold stories of triumph, controversy, and the greatest stars of the game. From the league's humble beginnings to its modern glory, it is a courtside seat to 75 years of NBA history. And if you're a golf fanatic, then you gotta check out Matt Adams' book, The Golf Round I'll Never Forget. I've used it as a reference in this podcast over the past year for lots of stories that I've done, and I can tell you from experiencing it, this is a great book. Relive 50 of golf's most memorable moments through the eyes of the legends themselves. It's the closest you'll ever get to walking the fairways with the greatest to ever play the game. Grab your copy of NBA 75 or The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, available from Firefly, wherever you get your books. On this day in 2014, it was the most shocking scoreline from a World Cup match in history. Germany 7, Brazil 1. This was a semifinal match in the World Cup, hosted by Brazil. The expectations for the Brazilian team was nothing short of winning the cup. The Germans struck first in the 11th minute when Thomas Müller scored.
Germany's first corner. Plenty of height on it. It's gone through. Germany score! It's exactly what Brazil was dreading.
Müller said scoring that early goal opened the door to so many more opportunities.
I scored the first goal, and I think that was the key, because then the Brazilian, they wanted to repair it so much that they forgot to defend.
In the 23rd minute, the Germans struck again with Miroslav Klose, making it 2-0. That also gave Klose his 16th career World Cup goal, making him the all-time leading goal scorer in World Cup history. They then added another 3 goals in the next 6 minutes. Toni Kroos opened his account on the World Cup stage with not 1, but 2 goals in 2 minutes. And then when Sami Khedira scored in the 29th, the only thing left to determine was how bad this was going to get. It was 5-0 at half. Germany added 2 more in the second. And if Oscar had not scored in the 90th for Brazil, it would have set the record for the worst defeat ever by Brazil in a World Cup. As it stood, the 6-goal deficit tied the 6-0 defeat to Uruguay that they suffered back in the 1920 World Cup. Brazilian fans were left in shock and disbelief as the goals continued to pour in. It was unthinkable, unimaginable for such a horrible defeat to be handed out to their team in their World Cup. 5 days later, Germany would go on to win the 2014 World Cup with a 1-0 win over Argentina. On this day in 1980, it was the Major League Baseball All-Star Game at LA's Dodger Stadium, and there were a couple of new things going on in this edition. This was the first game that a large-scale video screen was used at an athletic event. Mitsubishi rolled out Diamond Vision specifically to debut at this All-Star Game. Now, you go to any stadium at this point and there will be a Diamond Vision screen or Sony's Jumbotron somewhere or everywhere in the stadium, along with ribbon boards and electronic signboards. Now, with nothing to compare it to back in 1980, they used a ratio that the screen height should be about 3% of the maximum viewing distance. So if the farthest seat was 600 feet away, the screen should be 18 feet tall and about 25 feet wide. The early Diamond Vision boards used cathode ray tubes, but of course now everything is LEDs and moving toward OLED. The largest one in existence now is at the home of the Dallas Cowboys, with 2 72 feet high, 160 feet long high-definition boards installed above the field at AT&T Stadium. Now, the second new thing that happened was this was the first time "O Canada" was sung and televised to an American audience. The song had become the national anthem of Canada just a week prior. On this day in 1889, it was the last bare-knuckle fight for a championship title, and there actually was a belt involved. At this point in U.S. history, there were only 38 states, but boxing was illegal in all of them, and it was illegal in just about every country around the world. So any boxing matches that there were had to be promoted through simple word of mouth. Another thing to know is that at this point in boxing history, a round ended when one of the fighters went down. As an example, in this fight, the first round lasted about 5 seconds. Later on in the fight, there was a round that lasted about 15 minutes. And while this is bare knuckle, the fighters could also wrestle as long as they did not grab below the waist. You could not hit the fighter when they were down, and there was no biting or kicking. So this fight was between John L. Sullivan, the recognized champ of the world, and Jack Kilrain, who sort of designated himself as the champion after constructing a championship belt with his face on it and awarding it to himself. The fight was scheduled to be held in Louisiana, somewhere outside of New Orleans. The exact location was kept top secret. Just before the clock struck midnight on July 7th, a train pulled into a station in New Orleans, and those with the special tickets boarded, filling it to capacity, and they set off to an unknown destination. 5 hours later, the train finally came to a stop in a lumber camp a little more than 100 miles north of New Orleans in a town called Richburg, Mississippi. There was a wooden ring set up there with ropes around it on a 30,000-acre plantation. The spectators got off the train and they lined all sides of the ring, 20 to 30 deep. The ring was set in a little depression surrounded by small hillsides that provided a rugged stadium setup. It was a hot Mississippi day. By the time the folks got off the train, it was in the 90s. It took another 5 hours for the fighters to arrive, and by that point, the temp was just north of 100. At 10:10 a.m., with the legendary Bat Masterson sitting ringside to act as clock keeper, the referee brought the fighters to their marks in the center of the ring and started the bout. Kilrain immediately grabbed Sullivan and threw him to the mat. It took all of 5 seconds, but that was the end of round 1. There was 30 seconds between each round, and both fighters had to exit their corner and stand on their mark to begin the next one. If a boxer could not get to his mark, the fight would be over. The fight settled a little until the 4th round. Kilrain was keeping his distance so much that the time dragged on. Sullivan got frustrated, and he yelled at Kilrain, "Why don't you fight? You're the champion. Champion of what?" Kilrain did not get angered by the goading and continued his strategy to try to tire out the bigger Sullivan. The 4th round lasted 15.5 minutes. Kilrain did draw first blood in the 7th with a shot to Sullivan's ear. Money changed hands amongst the ringside folks who had taken action on first blood. The heat began to take a bit of a toll, though, but you wouldn't have known it by taking a look at Sullivan. He refused to sit between rounds, shouting, "Why should I sit? I'll just have to get right back up again." The fight drug on into the 10th, the 20th, the 50th round, into the 60th and the 70th. And again, remember, a round did not end until someone went down. Finally, in the 75th round, under the blistering Mississippi sun, Kilrain's head was lolling back and forth. It flopped so badly that some thought his neck was already broken. He had trouble holding his arms up. He had huge red welts on his back and his torso. He had trouble standing on his feet. A ringside doctor had a word with one of Kilrain's quartermen and told him that his man would die if he stepped back into the middle of the ring. At the start of the 76th, Kilrain wobbled to his feet, took a few uncertain steps towards the middle. His corner tossed in the towel to end the fight. The belt was handed over to Sullivan, and he was once again recognized as the last bare-knuckle champion. After 170 years of bare-knuckle pugilism on tiny little stages all across the world, the era of ungloved fighters was over. On this day in 2010, this was the night that everybody tuned into ESPN and watched LeBron James announce that he was taking his talents to South Beach and play for the Miami Heat. After 7 seasons with Cleveland, LeBron was at the end of his contract and he was a bit frustrated. A few folks got together, and they hatched the idea for an hour-long special. Jim Gray conducted the interview. The special actually went on for 75 minutes before LeBron finally announced at 9:28 p.m. Eastern Time that he was indeed going to Miami. Interesting fact, NBA Commissioner David Stern was not a fan of this whole announcement deal, and he tried to get it canceled. And time now for today's That's Got Nothing to Do with Sports fun fact. As a means to take the edge off a particularly stressful day in the Pacific during World War II, sailors made a potent concoction they called torpedo juice. Now, while that may sound like a fancy name for a drink, it was actually a literal translation of what the drink consisted of. The bartender, you might say, siphoned off a little bit of the 180 proof ethanol that fueled a torpedo, and then he mixed it with a variety of fruit juices. A torpedo operator said, "The torpedo wasn't going to use it all anyway, so we kind of tapped off a little bit of it." The ratio tended to be 1 part torpedo fuel to 3 parts fruit juice. When the Navy brass heard what sailors were doing, they attempted to discourage the men from drinking torpedo fuel by adding red dye and an unpleasant-tasting oil to it. And still, the sailors found a way to distill their liquor from the torpedo fuel and continued to drink it, despite the fact it was extremely volatile and even led to blindness, and a few sailors died from consuming it. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.
The Sports History Network, where legends live on and the past plays loud. Welcome to the place where history's proud. From gridiron glory to the hardwood stars, from the racetrack heat to Olympic bars. It's the voices, the stories, the moments you miss, told by fans and pros who live for this. Hook and Themic, the Sports History Network, where the past comes alive. Podcasts and blogs that keep the flame high. From Babe to Brady, Alley to the Dome. If it's history and sports, then this is the home. SportsHistoryNetwork.com, the headquarters of sports yesteryear.